Hi everyone, thanks for joining part one of this two-part webcast from Nature Careers on building great CVs for academia and industry. My name's Jack, one of the editors at Nature Careers. In just a moment, I'm going to pass it on to Sarah Blackford, who's going to do an excellent pre-recorded talk on that topic. Sarah will talk for, I would say, around 40 minutes, after which we're going to go into a live question and answer session. If you do have any questions at any point, do just type them in to the question box, which should be on your webpage, and we'll get to them in around 40 minutes. Thanks in the meantime. I very much hope you enjoy the webcast.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this first in a two-part series presented by Nature Careers. And we will be talking today about how to make great CVs for industry and academia. Part one will be focusing on your strategy. I'm Sarah Blackford. I'm an academic careers advisor. I specialize in supporting PhD students and postdocs with their careers. And you can find me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Twitter to find out more about me. I also have a blog. So let's get on. So imagine that you want to fix your roof. What are you going to do? You're going to look for a builder, probably one who specializes in fixing roofs. And here we have three vans, and I'm asking you to imagine which one is likely to catch your eye at this moment in time when you're looking for someone who specializes in fixing roofs. So it's most likely to be the van on the right. And this is an analogy for you writing your CV. Depending on the job that you're applying for, you will be advertising yourself in a different way to catch the eye of the employer, depending on what their needs are. So you need to take a strategic approach to writing your CV. This is because how long do you think an employer will spend reading your CV? Probably only 20 to 30 seconds on the first read. So let's imagine you're in a shop, you're looking at a lot of magazines, a wall of magazines on a shelf, and you are really being advertised to buy these magazines. They're trying to get your attention. They are presenting themselves at different audiences, trying to catch their attention. So different magazines will have different images, different messages, according to who they're trying to attract the attention of. And you need to attract the attention of the employer as well. And so you need to use these marketing techniques and sell yourself. It's no good just presenting yourself and saying, here I am. You need to say, here I am. Okay, so here's the strategy for writing an effective and CV and covering letter. These are the aspects that really you need to consider first. So you need to know who you are and what you want, what you have to offer, and the kind of job that would suit you. And so then you'll be able to market yourself and know and understand what you have to offer the employer and why. And then you also need to know about the employer and what they need. And then you match yourself, you sell yourself to the employer. Here's a basic career planning process that I use actually in my workshops, and it's a very basic planning process which involves 4 aspects. So first of all, you've got self, knowing yourself, as I said before, knowing the skills you have, your values, your interests, and so on. All these things will influence the kind of career that will be suitable to you. And then opportunities. What opportunities are out there? What is the job market? And what kind of networking can you do in order to access those career sectors? And then making decisions, making informed decisions and taking action in order to make a transition then to your next position, which will require you to write a CV, to be present online as well, to have a consistent profile online that matches with your CV, and then to go for an interview finally to get the job. In this part one, we're going to really be focusing on self and the skills and matching those with the job market. So let's have a look at that job market, because you can see I've put down a lot of jobs here. It's only a snapshot really of what is out there, and I've categorized them into particular sectors to sort of make it a bit more accessible. But it can be overwhelming when you think of the number of different types of roles that you could apply for with a PhD, as a postdoc, obviously academic research positions, which take place in universities, but also research institutes, hospitals, NGOs, and so on. You may want to transition into industry or business, and again, lots of different sectors, different types of companies, large and small. And then within those companies, there are lots of different roles that you can play. It's not just research. There are other areas, services, commercial careers, administrative roles. So all these types of jobs are all available with people with a PhD, and you will see them around when you look at industry, when you look at LinkedIn profiles, and you see the kind of people that are working in these companies. There are lots of communication type roles. These differ from being very much on the front line to being behind the scenes writing. Teaching as a form of communication. This is my sort of role. Training. Lots of administrative roles you might see in your own university where people have a PhD, but they've moved on to the administrative career path. Enterprising could be setting up your own company. It could also be working as a strategic consultant, working in product development, and other types of careers that might involve you being a freelancer. And then finally, something completely different, which could involve working in completely non-scientific sectors. Lots and lots of PhD qualified people work in investments, in finance, in analytics, and then they might go into other types of roles or set up their own businesses. And so it's just to show you the range of different jobs that are out there and available. But how do you know what type of job you want to do? Because as I said, you need to know what you want in order to be able to market yourself effectively to the employer. And what I've done is I've taken this theory of career choice, which was presented in 1973 by John Holland, which helps you to make career choices by categorizing skills and interests. And what I've done is I've changed this and I've adapted it to what I've called the PhD career choice indicator. So let's have a look at these 6 different categories of skills and interests that apply to PhDs and postdocs. So first of all, functional type roles. This is the more practical work that you do to generate data, qualitative, quantitative methodologies, the tools, the techniques, lots of online statistics, mathematics, programming. So in order to generate the data, that's the functional work. Investigative is the curiosity. It's developing a hypothesis and testing it. It's interpreting the data. It's then deciding on where do we go next with this. And so analytical work and understanding, reading the papers, understanding the research landscape. Artistic is interesting because obviously, as a scientist, you may have had to choose between art and science at some point in your career. But a lot of people have this latent artistic, creative part of them that they like to express as part of their science and even take forward and use it more in their careers. And so this might be converting science into something more accessible to the public, something more creative. It could be visualizing your data. It could be making infographics or doing a very interesting poster presentation for a conference. Social is more around what I do, helping, advising, interacting, having people skills, teaching, cooperating. And so, there are opportunities to do that when you're doing your PhD and postdoc within your department. Enterprising is more of a leadership role. It's taking a more visionary role, perhaps setting up a business, directing, leading, making blue sky discoveries, taking risks, that kind of side of things. And then we're all managers. Ultimately, we all have to organize our time, our resources, Maybe you have to manage people, you have to supervise them. And maybe that's something you really enjoy doing while you're doing your research, getting involved in committees and organising events. And so these are the sort of 6 categories: functional, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and management, which really help you to then start to really think about the areas of the job market that may be of interest to you. So when you look at job adverts, you'll be able to, think of them in more detail rather than just looking at the job title. So think about the tasks and activities you do directly and indirectly related to your research and core interests. So let's have a look at all the things you do: methodologies, experiments, supervising. I've just put some of these up on the screen, but you can see how you might put those into different categories. So methodologies would be functional, and experiments are functional. Writing reports could be management. Reviewing papers, investigative. Learning new technology, investigative. Outreach, artistic. So, you can see how you've got all these different things that you do. But what do you actually enjoy doing? Think about what you enjoy doing, because that's what you want to take forward in your career. That's where you want to go in the future, and drop the things that you don't like so much. You may have to do some of it, but you don't want it to be at the core of your role. So think about those categories and which ones you might favour. So think of your top 3 perhaps. So you may think, well, I really like lab work and I love the investigation, but actually I'm getting involved in a lot of the committees and organising, or maybe you like teaching as well. Maybe there are things you really don't like doing, and they will be at the bottom of your list. So then you need to think then what jobs they might map onto. So these jobs that actually have these core functions, have the core activities as part of the role. So for example, a functional job where you're programming, or you're a specialist scientist, you're using your techniques, you're maybe still in the lab, or you're doing analytical work, and you're a facilities manager, something along those lines. A postdoctoral researcher would be very much still in the investigative side of things, especially academics, research scientists, and industry. But then again, journalists, managing editors, curators, they also use investigative skills, but in a different way. Artistic, as I mentioned before, could be turning your science into something more accessible to the public, and that could be science communication, it could be on the front line, it could be behind the scenes as a writer, could be using imagery, photography. Social could be doing lecturing, so more involved in actually engaging with students and teaching, or it could be something to do with liaising with people, being a medical science liaison, or working across projects, being a research scientist, but actually in a variety of projects and interacting with people and helping them, or being an advisor like I am. Enterprising is interesting. Group leader, professor, PI, they all have to be very enterprising. They're constantly looking for new money, new avenues, new ways of looking at their research to find new ways of getting money, securing funding, getting their papers published. So they've got to do a lot of negotiating, persuading, and so on. And so they are linked into this enterprising side of the model here, but that, along with company directors, sales, and so on. Obviously, there's a lot of investigative work that they do as well, but that is something where, as a leader, you have to then switch to this more enterprising way of doing things. And then management, as I say, we're all using management skills. Some of us relish it. Some people love doing the management side, and they go into things like they might be a program manager. They might be coordinating on an EU program. They could be a project manager. They may move out of science altogether and go into finance, or, they may get into the journal side of things. So, look at those, and is there anything that really stands out to you? Is there somewhere that you think you could position yourself? Obviously, these jobs involve more than just investigative, artistic, and so on. So I would say probably one or two at the core with a couple of others as more subsidiary skills that are used in those roles. So let's just have a look at a couple of examples here. So postdoctoral research scientists, here I've highlighted in yellow that there's a lot of investigative requirements and a lot of functional requirements. So you're needed to generate the data and be able to understand the science, but also things like project management is a subsidiary of this role. So here, investigative, functional, social management. So if investigative functional is what you're really interested in, then, you know, postdoctoral research is for you, but obviously you have a limited time that you can spend in that role. So scientific research assistant, if you wanted to change and move into a more scientific research, but in industry or in other businesses, here you've got the Max Planck Institute looking for a scientific research scientist, but this person is not in the lab, they're not doing functional work, they are contributing their own ideas, they're helping across projects, they're working with other people, they're presenting reports, they have to have a solid knowledge base, but a lot of it is to do with communication and teams and really having a variety of interests across a particular area of science. So it's investigative for sure, but it's more management and social. And then, as I was saying before about the enterprising nature of the professorships, and as you move up the academic career track, you'll see that, you know, the functional requirements fade away and they get replaced by a more enterprising requirement. They still obviously need to be investigative, but they need to be looking for new avenues of research, and that means applying for grants. So they have to show a track record of external research grant funding and also of you know, publishing papers. And in addition to that, because they're leaders and they're running groups and so on, they have to also understand the management. And because they're being employed by an institution, they have to understand how that department works and have an awareness of the culture of that organization. So investigative, but enterprising and management. So you're kind of seeing a shift from being a PhD student, a postdoc, very much towards investigative, enterprising and management role. And then here we have a public engagement coordinator. So this is a much more artistic, it's a communication role. And what you're doing is you're presenting your work, not your work, but other people's science in general to the public. So you need to engage them, you need to have great interpersonal skills. And so these are things that you would need to highlight to demonstrate that you have those skills. You've got the artistic side, the investigative, but also the social interactive role as well. So let's go back to this career planning process again. We've moved into the transitional area. This is where you write your CV. So what is a CV for? It is basically to get you to an interview. You're very unlikely to have be given a job on the basis of your CV. You are likely then, if your CV is successful, to be called for interview either in person or online. So you need to have a strategy. So think about what you're trying to do. At the center of this model, you have the PhD student, postdoctoral researcher, who's trying to transition either into A, scientist in industry, B, permanent academic post ultimately, project manager, scientific writer. So this transition area requires different activities, different behaviors, different networking, and also a different CV. So your strategy, first of all, is to show awareness of the role of the company, of the research group. You need to know as much as you can in order to target your sales document, your CV. And so company websites, research group websites, group leader websites are all there. They're open, they're available. You can look at papers, you can really do your research. Social media is a fantastic, rich source of information. You can look up companies on here, people who work in those companies. You can look at what they're tweeting about on Twitter, and then you can really show genuine knowledge and understanding of those roles, of the departments, of the companies and the research groups. There may even be professional organizations or specialist discussion groups. It depends on the role as to where you would find this information. But networking is your friend. That's what you will really help you if you connect with people and find out more about what they're doing. And then there's a more personal edge to things. That will be a whole other webinar, so we won't go into networking today. So you need to target your applications. This is how you're going to show awareness of what the job requirements are, and then you're matching yourself in a relevant way. To explain your interest and motivation for this research group or this company, and that will be really in your covering letter. You would do that, and the evidence will be in your CV. Just remember though, don't be put off when you see a great big long list of requirements for a job and then you tick off all those job requirements until you have 100% before you apply. Most employers would say 50 to 60% of the requirements is fine, as long as it's not something that's absolutely core and essential to the job that you need to have. But as long as you can see that you might be able to develop into that role and you're passionate and you really want to go for this job, do a bit of networking as well, and really don't be put off if you don't fit 100% of the requirements. So let's get down to the more nitty-gritty here and what to include on your academic CV. Obviously, personal details. I've made a list here. You put that at the top, and you might nowadays include social media. And so, you would have links to maybe your LinkedIn, your ResearchGate, Twitter, whatever it is. You can guarantee that if you get called for interview, especially, you will probably get Googled by the company or by the research group. So make sure everything's consistent and make sure you're looking very professional. I put a question mark against career goal and key capabilities because I'm not sure that this really adds to a CV, especially if you have a covering letter. So think carefully about whether you're going to include that or not. On your academic CV, obviously education is very important and you want to put your PhD first and then go back from there. And then any other professional qualifications that you may have got, you can put that in the education section. Then you'll have your research skills and achievements. That will be very core to the role. And then obviously the techniques that you're using and the functional work. Teaching and supervision, depending on the job, is it in a research institute or is it in a university, whether that is important or not. Publications, funding, conferences, all these things are really making a whole academic character for yourself when you write that on your CV, and it shows a rounded academic experience. Outreach and innovation, depending on the role, again, it's important to put things in like that nowadays, but don't spend too much space putting in your outreach at the expense of your research experience, depending on how the job is pitched and what their requirements are. And then hobbies and interests only if it's relevant. It's not necessary to put those in. You don't have to put every single thing in that you've done. You've got to be strategic. And your referees, well, you're in a community, you're in an academic community, so your own supervisor is probably going to be perhaps known to this other academic that you're applying to, and then try to find somebody else who can give another perspective of you. Then for your non-academic CV, well, you're the same person, but what you're doing is you're presenting yourself in a different way. You're highlighting different aspects of yourself and you're recreating yourself as an artistic person or a management person or whatever it is, or an investigative person, but more aimed at industry. So you're using broader language. And your personal details, again, you need to put that in. Your career goal, capabilities, as I said before, I would err on the side of caution whether to put that in or not. Your education is important, same as before. You could position this at the start of your CV or you could put it later on. You might want to put your skills section in straight away and show your research skills and achievements if you're applying for a research position in industry. But as I said, make it a bit broader. Focus on your skills, not on the specific project itself. It's not necessarily that they're interested in. It may be particular analytical techniques, programs that you're using and so on that are interesting for them. And you'll get that from the role that they've specified and the requirements that they're looking for. Analytical skills, communication, team working, and so on. So you look at their job advert and you take note of the key aspects and create 3 or 4 sections, and then you populate each of those sections with the evidence, with your experiences. You can include your publications if you're applying for research positions in companies. A lot of companies now are working with universities. They allow their employees to publish, they encourage it. So many of them perhaps have even got a PhD themselves anyway, and so they appreciate this kind of information. If it is a long list of publications, I would put it in as an appendix. You could still put in key publications on the body of your CV, but you don't want to break up the flow with a whole great big list of publications. Refer to it in an appendix, and any other long list that you have, put it in an appendix. So you'd have a core 2-page CV, and then you can then make it longer with these appendices. I think hobbies and interests are more interesting to non-academic employers, only because of the interpersonal aspects of the roles and the fact that, you know, maybe you're in a team, or you get involved in things, or you've shown some achievements in your outside your own academic career, and it adds another dimension to you. And referees, well, you know, your supervisor, but it may be that, you know, if you did an internship in industry, or there may be other people that can vouch for you and write a good reference with which is relevant to this position. And, you know, you could just write referees available on request if you don't want your referees to be approached before you get called for interview. So to write your CV, I would say brainstorm what you do, what your achievements are. So previously I said to you, you know, think of all the things that you do, think of the categories that they are in, and so on. For your CV, you need to start looking at things in more detail. You need to set the scene and give clear indications of what you were doing, and almost write a little mini story. So here you've got optimized a protocol design to deliver key data resulting in 2 publications. So you have a little end result. As a member of the Microbiology Society, I secure funding to travel to an international conference to present my research. So this is enterprising in the sense that somebody's, you know, applying competitively for funding. That would add quite nicely if they were applying for a fellowship or something like that, to show that they have already been securing funding. Here, worked in a team of 7. It's good to give quantities, actually, to say how many people and what was the outcome. Oh, we attracted over 100 people to our conference. Presented my work to the public, including displays and so on. So that would be useful for an outreach type of position. Undertook an internship, which shows, you know, maybe knowledge of the commercial environment, and you'd be able to get a reference perhaps from your supervisor there, and that would show enterprising and social sort of context. Yeah. So, and then collaborated with 3 research groups, saying where they're based, and then again, it doesn't have to be, the outcome doesn't have to be a publication. It could just be new data was generated. And again, here you teach yourself a lot of different techniques. When you're a PhD student or postdoc, you tend to take all that for granted, but actually outside of academia, this is really sought after. People who are easy with technology and are not afraid to learn new different techniques, but will mean that their company can keep going forward and developing in this sort of global market. So, structuring your CV, how to get noticed. So if we go back to this Holland's model, this PhD career indicator, and look at these categories again, what you need to do is write a CV that is a functional CV or an artistic CV or an enterprising CV. It depends on the job that you're applying for. So for example, you may, as I say, go for a job where it's mainly investigative functional, maybe with some management as a subsidiary. So there's 3 areas you need to really highlight on your CV, or maybe it's investigative, artistic, social. So now let's look at some real examples here. So we have Dr. Lauren Bourget, and she is writing an academic CV. And so she has put her education first, followed by her publications, followed by her research experience. You can see that's all very investigative, isn't it? She's put that on the front page. She's got her details up there. She could have put herself as Lauren Bourget, PhD. She could have just been Lauren Bourget. It's up to you how you decide to name yourself at the start of the CV for academia. And then she's got her functional techniques on the second page, and then some more investigative and extra information there. But look, you can see it's an investigative functional CV. There's no doubt about that. And then here, she's now going for industry. So what she's done is she's switched her sections around, and this job was much more of a functional position. And so she's put her functional experiences and skills first to attract their attention on the first page. Then she's got her education, her investigative work. She's showing that she's working in other institutions as well and with different people. And then she's got some more investigative skills on page 2, but she's also got a section on interpersonal skills, because obviously in industry you need to work across departments, and it's really important to show that you can communicate with a wide range of people. So here she's emphasized functional, investigative, social, and then a bit more investigative functional at the end there. Now, the third CV, this is where Lauren has, this did not require a PhD, so she didn't put doctor at the top of her page because it wasn't a requirement. And she's put her skills and her experiences first on the front page and put her education on the second page, because that's not the most important information. What they are looking for is someone with science communication skills. This is a very artistic role, but there's project management required. There's lots of collaboration and team working. And you'll see there in her membership at the bottom of page 2 on the right-hand side that she had this membership of Biodocs Lyon and Alta Conso when she was doing her PhD. And this was voluntary work that she did as a sort of sideline. And a lot of PhDs and postdocs do this, and they have these other interests which they'd like to bring into the core of their job. So, you know, investigative functional when you're doing your research is at the core of your role, but actually you're doing a lot of artistic, social, other stuff. And what you want to do is bring that into the core of your career. So what she's done is she's taken the stuff that she was doing, all the experiences that she gained, and she's expanded those out into the whole of page 1. And if she applied for this academic role, of course, you wouldn't even know that she'd been doing those things. And so here, artistic, social, management, and then a bit of our investigative, showing her scientific publications. So, you know, that is, and she's also, for her references, she's used somebody who she worked with at the Alta Conso. So if you do voluntary work, you can use those people for your references as well. So structuring your CV, how to get noticed, think about the length. As I said, 2 pages is good. Use action words and highlight the most important information. Stay on message and keep it relevant. Think about the layout. Don't use a lot of white space. And if you're going to have 2 pages, fill those 2 pages up. No spelling and grammar mistakes. And use the same language. So here, you would have noticed, or if you look back at the CVs that I showed you, CV 1 and 2, that the academic CV said research experience, and the industry CV said employment history. So you're kind of using the words of those cultures, those communities, to show that you're going to fit in with them and you're going to be able to communicate with them. So I've given you some other examples there as well. I won't go through them one by one, but you can see, research work, project management, collaboration, teamwork, cooperation, and so on. So covering letters, we'll end this session with covering letters, the icing on the cake. And they are very important. And you can see from a survey that EMBL did recently, where they surveyed PIs, principal investigators, group leaders, asking them what they saw as most important in an application, what they looked for first of all. And you can see that it's about 50% of them is the covering letter is the first thing they look at. So the covering letter introduces your CV. It really says a lot about you and what you know about the group and about the company. And then, as I said before, the CV is then the evidence. So the covering letter should include what you're applying for and where you saw the advert. That could be a sort of starting point for the letter. And then why you're applying. So what do you know about them? Refer to what they're doing and then link yourself with them and make it relevant. Highlight the key points and match your skills and put things in order of importance on the front and the back page accordingly. And then end with a confident conclusion. I look forward to hearing from you. I would like to discuss this further with you. And I have a couple of examples here. This is a covering letter where the person's, this is Clara Goodman, and she's applying for an academic position. And what she's done is she's really shown that she has investigated the research group and what they're doing. She's talked about papers that she's read, and then she's linked in what she's doing and how that might add a new perspective and that can add to the group. And, that's really important to think about if you're applying for postdoctoral or junior academic positions, that you're a colleague, you're a fellow staff member, and you need to show that you understand and you're going to contribute and, be able to put this project on a good footing. So it's quite a different role to say if you're applying for a PhD. And then industry. Well, industry is a little bit harder in a way because it's not in your community and maybe you don't know anyone in industry or you don't know anything about these companies. So how do you pitch your covering letter? Well, there's plenty of ways to find out about different companies. You can look at their websites. You can follow people on Twitter and the companies and the people who work there. Look at them on LinkedIn. Maybe contact an alumni from your institution who's working at this company. And so you need to really be genuine about the way you pitch yourself in the covering letter and talk about what you know about the company. So don't be superficial, try to be genuine, something that sets you apart, and then link again in with what you're doing. And if you get invited for interview, you're likely to be asked these questions again. So you'd have to do even more investigating around the company. So bear that in mind. Just a quick health warning that CV rules are different in different countries. I mean, generally speaking, I would say there's a kind of international CV format now, which is very much what I've shown you today, especially for academia and for international corporate companies. I think, they very much go along these lines, although for companies in particular countries like Germany, they may want a photograph, and in other countries as well. French companies tend to want a resume, a one-page resume. Some countries prefer your CV to be chronological rather than targeted. So, you have to maybe look this up. I've got contacts in a lot of different countries, people who do my job. So, find somebody like me who might be able to help you to pitch your CV in the right way. Then do follow the rules. You don't always have to send a CV. Sometimes it's an online application. You have to follow the rules and do what they want you to do. And, you know, as I said before, networking is a really good strategy. You know, it's like if you go back to the roofing companies at the beginning there, if somebody recommended you a roofer who'd done some good work for them, then you may not look anywhere else. You may, you know, be quite happy to settle for that person. And that's what happens with networking. If somebody recommends you or you're connected with people, that in itself reduces the risk for employers, and you know, they're more likely to favor somebody who they've had a recommendation from. And then you know, writing effective CV, that can be quite productive, but you've got to get it right, and you need to be very full on and be very specific and send it to a named person, do lots of research beforehand, because that person isn't actually looking for anyone at the moment. But this can be quite a good way of getting yourself known, and you know, they may not have anything at that time, but they may put you on file or maybe refer you to somebody else. So in summary, applying for jobs is a matching process. You just match your CV, your covering letter, to what the employer is looking for. So you need to know what the employer wants, you know, who they are, what they're offering. Everything you can find out will help you. So use those great research skills that you have developed on looking at careers, looking at different jobs and people in those roles. And be aware of yourself, you know, really think hard about all the skills that you are using, all the achievements. You know, this is not a time for modesty. You need to really, you know, promote yourself as best to your own abilities. Then you need to sell yourself, promote yourself to the employer, and target your CV, target every CV. Even if the posts are very similar, you'll still need to maybe change it very slightly. So it's a dynamic document. Always send a cover letter, even if they say, you know, send a CV, it means send a CV and a covering letter as well. And if you're sending out loads of CVs and you're getting no results, then likelihood is you're doing something wrong and you need to get advice from somebody, maybe a professional like myself, or it might be from an academic or somebody else that you know who can give you some feedback. Okay, so that ends part one. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was useful. Next time, I'm going to be with Jack Leeming from Nature Careers, and we're going to be looking at some CVs and critiquing them, and that will take place on the 15th of October. So I will see you then, and I look forward to it.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for that pre-recorded talk. That was the first of a two-part series. So if you're interested in attending that CV review chat that Sarah just mentioned in her video, please click the link just below this video. If you want to sign up to a CV review, just click the link below this video. We're now going to go into that live question and answer session, and we look forward to seeing your questions. Hello, here I am again, magically in a change of clothes, thanks to the wonder of video technology. I'm here with Sarah. Sarah, thank you so much for that talk.
Thank you.
We're going to start answering your questions now. If you do have a question, please do feel free to put it in the box just below where you're seeing this video. I also have a couple of housekeeping things to quickly mention. A lot of people are asking if this video will be available later. It absolutely will be. You should have a link to this webcast page. Once you come back to it after this event is finished, you'll be able to access it again. So you will have access to this after the fact. Secondly, I just mentioned a second webcast. You can sign up to that again just below this video. There should be a link to Nature Careers Live, where Sarah and I will be running through some CVs, some example CVs, and looking at them. I'm going to go into questions now. We've had quite a few in already. Sarah, a lot of people are asking the same sort of question, so I'll summarize it. It's around LinkedIn. How do you turn your CV into a LinkedIn page? You know, what do you put in and what do you leave out, and how does that sort of how should people think about that process?
Well, I think the most important thing is that you keep things consistent. So, you know, you may be a postdoctoral researcher, you may be a PhD student, but you don't necessarily have to title yourself that on your LinkedIn page. You can call yourself a researcher, a project manager, an entrepreneur. It depends on the kind of role that you're looking for. So make sure you have that consistency. And actually, you see a lot of people, they'll put that vertical line and they'll say researcher, project manager, science communicator. So they have more than one sort of job title, and that enables them to be found, I guess, by the recruitment agencies. And then for their profile, again, you know, you have to use these keywords that will be relevant to the role that you're looking for. And I think, I mean, LinkedIn has these particular categories, so obviously it restricts you. You know, you need to put certain information in, but I would definitely stick to the reverse chronological order, which you have in a CV. And then, you know, look for people to endorse you. You know, look for the extras that you get with the LinkedIn profile. And you can promote yourself by posting, by commenting on other people's posts and just following people, linking with them, and it helps to bring you into communities. So especially outside of academia, I think you know, this is a great way to sort of step inside a new community and start to engage in conversations with people and find out about their world and their language. So I would say follow their rules and really think of keywords that are kind of linked into those industries, and then have some parity between what you put in your CV and what you have in your on your LinkedIn profile, because you don't want to confuse employers.
Right, and I suppose there'll be some excellent examples out there if you look at scientists who you admire on LinkedIn, or you know, I mean an awful lot of the time you can just, you know, a good one when you see it, right? So if you click through enough LinkedIn profiles, you'll find a good one. We've also had a lot of questions in around sort of international differences in CVs, specifically including a photo, for instance. Is that something you would recommend, or yeah, tell us about including a photo in your CV?
I mean, the convention generally is not to put one in, because it's a sort of diversity, equality, inclusion thing, isn't it? That why would you need to have a photo? Why would people need to see that? And then the other thing is that, you know, if you've got a panel of interviewers and they have photocopied the CVs and they've all got them hard copy in front of them, you know, a photograph never photocopies very well either. And the other thing is, of course, most people have a social media profile. Most people have an image on the internet anyway. And the other thing, of course, is that if you do put a social media link onto your CV at the top with your personal details, that will then take them through to a photograph of you, which will be, of course, very professional as part of your LinkedIn profile or your ResearchGate academic profile. But I know that it tends not to be for academia so much, and for big international companies. I think when you're going for smaller companies, or companies that are very sort of country specific, perhaps in France, in Germany, and other European countries, maybe other countries, that a photograph is required. So again, as I said in the video, I think, you know, you need to find out, dig down, and speak to people who will be able to advise you on that particular country.
Right, and just essentially ask for more clarification if you need it.
Yeah, right? Always, absolutely. But I mean, for a CV, again, I think I would tend not to put one on there, and put the LinkedIn profile, and then they'll see your picture anyway.
Great, thank you. I'm going to run through a few more questions. Someone here has asked, I'm going to read this one out because I think it's interesting. This person has 2 different jobs. For a research scientist at a public institution. They also manage a shop. The activities, they say, aren't connected really in any way, but they're all part of this person's working experience. How should he present that in a CV? That sort of academic and non-academic experience.
Right, okay. So on an academic CV, obviously it's not directly relevant to the academic post. It's not directly functional or investigative, but there are management skills, time management and so on, and interactions and so on that may be of interest. And so what you can do is you can subsection your CV. So if, for example, say if you were a postdoc, you'd had 2 postdoc positions, maybe you'd had a PhD position, you could have your work experience or your research experience, and then you can put within your work history or your employment history, you could then put your managerial position that you have now, which would then be maybe moved on to the second page of your CV. It wouldn't be prominently as your first job, which may on first glance seem irrelevant to an academic. It may seem confusing, but if you can translate that into the kind of management experiences that you have, then that's probably the best way to take it in that context, and then write the actual job itself and the position that you had in a separate section, sort of maybe managerial responsibilities, something like that. So you don't have to do everything in chronological order. It has to be consistent. So if you're doing it now, you can't just sort of throw it somewhere else. You have to have a logical way of doing it. So you subsection, and then you can bring things to the fore and move things around accordingly, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to move on to another question. Thank you so much to everyone watching who's asking questions. There's an awful lot of them, so we likely won't be able to get through all of them, but I'll do my best to summarize some of the questions. We've got one here that I thought was interesting. It's around having a gap in your CV. This person has an incomplete master's degree for personal reasons, but did publish a paper and get some research done. So how should they present that on their CV? How should they get across, that they've succeeded and done good stuff within a degree, but they didn't complete that degree?
Yeah, I think we all get very, strung up about, the negative things. I know people always sort of really focus on that, and they think, oh, the employer's going to see that, and they're going to think, oh, that's a failure. That's something that didn't work well. And again, employers understand this. They realize that people build resilience through, failing or giving something up or not completing something, and yet you've still got achievements that came out of that. So for example, you could put that the achievements into a research experience, and you could add that to your PhD, and then where you list your PhD in education and you list your masters and you list your degree, you could say not completed, or you have the date, but they've already seen, you could say, referred to research experience for outputs from this research. So you always try to put a positive spin on it, but obviously not trying to hide yourself or to be covert. So I would say put your education then on page 2, and then you would be highlighting all these great research experience and outputs that you have. And then it would only be when they saw page 2 and they would see, oh, they didn't finish their masters, but what the hey, these things happen, but you've still managed to, do well out of it. And again, don't be drawing attention to it on your covering letter, saying, oh, and I didn't finish my masters. It doesn't matter, don't try to keep dwelling on these things too much.
Yeah, just highlight the positive, right? I guess that's what the CV's for, ultimately.
I mean,
and
they
if
may
they're curious
ask you
about it,
about
I imagine they'd ask for an interview.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. And then just be prepared, because if there's some gaps or some difficult things that you think that might have come up from your CV, then just prepare yourself with a good answer. Yeah, okay, I didn't finish it, but look what I did achieve. And the reason why I didn't want to carry on was because, whatever it was. And you always show yourself to be honest and genuine with the employer.
Thank you. We've had loads of questions about page lengths, and I know it's a difficult one to answer, and it's really does depend. But can you give any real rough rules of thumb for page lengths and CVs, for industry and academia?
The rule of thumb, 2 pages. That is the rule of thumb for a CV. A resume, I always think, is a 1 page. If they ask for 1 page, give them a page. And it can be quite, you know, like summarizing anything, can be quite difficult to get everything onto one page. You have to really think carefully about what you're going to put on there. But I think 2 pages is really, you know, the core of your CV. Everyone should be able to write their core CV on 2 pages. And as I spoke earlier in the video, is then if you want to expand it, add appendices. So you can say on page 1, refer to Appendix 1 for a list of publications, or refer to Appendix 2 for a list of funding, or whatever it is. Could be teaching. That's why academics have these big CVs, because they have these big long lists of appendices of all the things that they've done, conferences attended, and so on. But you don't want to break up the flow of the core CV by putting that in the middle. So I would always just refer, like you would in your thesis, like you would in any other document that you would write.
Great. Okay. And so you're saying 2 pages plus appendices. So you don't count for 2 pages as part of that. But at the same time, the stuff that isn't in an appendix should definitely be only in 2 pages.
I think this, yeah, the stuff that the
right.
core of the CV. So the front of the CV with your name, education, skills, work history, referees, hobbies, whatever I've spoken about during the video. And then, you know, the lists of the extra information. And actually nowadays, of course, you can put a link in from your CV. You could put a link into your LinkedIn page or to your research page, or you might have a blog, or you might have your own, you know, repository. And so this is the great thing nowadays, because most people will send their CV in as an email, and then those links will be there. But again, be aware that, you know, it may get printed out and then those links are lost. So you may want to also still send it as a document, as a separate document, as a PDF.
Great, thank you. This next question is close to my heart. Someone has asked about colours in a CV.
Right.
How many colours you should have, you know, how to incorporate colour, if at all.
I would say maximum 2 colors. I think it depends on the job. If you're going for a job that's very artistic, creative, and, you know, it's very visually sort of demanding or whatever, then it may be that you want to demonstrate your gift of using colors in your CV to impress the employer. But generally speaking, you would write quite a conservative CV. You've got to think again of how it might photocopy and how it might look to another person on their system. I see people doing black with blue, and it looks very nice. It's the same as, you know, using columns, maybe using a few infographics, but be very careful, because what you're trying to do is convey information, and you're trying to make it eye-catching, and you don't want people to get confused or, you know, just distracted by all these bells and whistles. Okay,
thank you very much. I'm going to find another question here. Please do keep your questions coming. Someone's asked here, why is it better to suggest for references on request rather than just to give people to get in touch with? Rather than to give contact details of your referees.
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends. It always depends, doesn't it? I think if you are applying for an academic position, then you are in an academic community already, and people know your supervisor or may have heard of them, and it will mean something to them. And perhaps you'll have to put in 2 or 3 referees, and maybe they will ask for them as well. If you're going outside of your academic you know, sort of research field, and maybe applying for industry or a business or something that's completely disconnected from your current role, it's unlikely that the person will have heard of your supervisor, or will actually, it will mean too much to them. So, you know, I guess, you know, and the other thing is, if you are sort of looking to be with a recruitment agency as well, and you don't want your supervisor or people to be contacted all the time, or you want some kind of control over it, so it means that the employer will have to come back to you to ask you for those referees. And so then you can tell your supervisor, or you can warn them off, or you can be selective about, you know, who gets to, you know, contact your reviewers and who doesn't. And on that note, I would always, if you can, tell your supervisor, tell your referees what you're applying for, the kind of jobs and what they ought to promote, you know, what would be good for them to highlight. And even nowadays, people might end up writing their own reference and then, you know, sort of signing it or getting it signed off by their supervisor or by their current boss. So, yeah, I think it's up to you, and you have to decide whether you want to put those referees' names in or not.
I think we're saying that a lot today, right? Because I think CVs aren't necessarily as structured as people think. They're kind of dynamic documents where you can move things around. It really does just depend. That's the kind of impression I'm getting from your talk,
Yeah,
which I suppose is quite freeing in a way.
It's freeing, but it also means you have to make a lot of decisions yourself as well in that respect. And as you say, there's no right or wrong answer, and don't think, oh gosh, if I do this, then you know, I won't get the interview because I put this in the wrong place, or I haven't put my referees in. If you're applying with an application form, then that is under the employer's control. You know, they've got sections and they tell you what you must put in, and you might have to put your age, and you might have to put in all sorts of information because it's very much more structured. But on a CV, as Jack said, you know, it is dynamic. You can be quite fluid in what you do, but on the other hand, then it's down to you to decide on the structure and how it's all going to fit together. So it's there's sort of pros and cons to both, really.
Great. Right, we are out of time today. Thanks so much, Sarah, for taking part. Can I make sure you can hear me okay?
Yes,
Is
I can
my
hear you
microphone
fine.
still working? Without any technical issues? Oh, good. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We will be back next week. If you sign up with the link just below this video where it says sign up for Careers Live, we'll run through some example CVs and answer some more questions in a week's time. Again, if you want to go to our second session, please follow the link just below this video and you can sign up and see us next week. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope it was useful. Thanks, Sarah, for talking us through that. And yeah, talk to you next week. Thanks.